Hello, and welcome to today's live stream about digital transformation, or to be more specific, how you can map out a plan, a strategy for your digital transformation, especially when you are an organization or a company in the Caribbean. That being said, welcome again. Let me know if you can see and hear me loud and clear. If you're joining me live, and as always, feel free to use the chat function to hit the like button and all the social media stuff, depending on the platform you are watching this. As always, you can ask your question, and I will try to answer it during this talk. And the idea or the goal of this live stream, of this talk, is to really give you something tangible that you can use, that you can implement really quickly to help you with your digital transformation. Because I think, digital transformation is probably an overused buzzword and often not very tangible, and people often don't really know what it actually is, how to actually implement it, and so on. And therefore, I want to give you a handful of tools today that you can use and focus more on the strategy side of things, or rather, want to make you aware that when we talk about digital transformation, at least from my perspective, strategy is way more important than the tools that you actually use to get there. And in my experience, a lot of people have it backwards, and that's also a kind of goal I want to achieve, to maybe point out that you maybe think about your strategy first before you start implementing. So the question is, of course, where to start. I think the last, especially 48 months, were kind of turbulent in every aspect of our lives. And I think by now every company, every CEO knows, okay, digital transformation, I have to do something, but where do we actually start? And then the question comes up, okay, what is actually digital transformation? When you type that word in Google, or that phrase into Google, you get millions of search results and software solutions, ERP solutions, e-commerce solutions, payments, AI, automation, robotics, and whatnot. All these things are popping up. But what I want to do today is to really focus on, okay, what can you do to actually improve your business and to generate a business outcome? Because I'm assuming we're all business owners or operators here, and therefore that should be the goal whenever we talk about digital transformation. Because what I often see, and what might be one of the biggest hurdles or biggest problems when we're talking about improving or using technology to improve our business, is what you maybe know as the shiny object syndrome. Meaning, we see some new piece of technology, usually a kind of hype around it, and therefore we have that urge to implement it. I think especially if you're an entrepreneur, if you run a business, if you solve problems, you're always fascinated by new solutions that are popping up, and new tools get developed every day. But at least in my experience, and maybe especially when we're talking about the Caribbean, shiny object syndrome is real. And I want to give you an example and hopefully encourage you to avoid it in the future. As you might know, since I think now almost 2 years, Jamaica has a kind of pilot project with their central bank digital currency, GemDex, and you can see the logo here. And when it was introduced a few weeks ago, and I think, at least from my perspective, that's a perfect example for shiny object syndrome. Why? Because first of all, the cost of that project is unknown, at least for the public, and I think even the people involved can't really estimate the total and overall cost for, in that case, the government, in that case, the taxpayer, or the taxpayers of Jamaica. So from a strategy perspective, okay, we don't really know the costs that we have to pay for that piece of technology or for that solution. And we also don't really know what the benefit is at the end of the day. Again, a lot of buzzwords are being used in that context, but the actual benefit for the end user, and in that case, the end user is the average Jamaican, every Jamaican citizen, is, as far as I can tell, unknown at this point. Of course, problem is there, meaning a lack of suitable bank services, financial services, payment solutions, and so on. But the question is, does that piece of technology actually solve the problem? Again, cost is unknown, the benefit is unknown, but it's new and cool, and we are one of the first ones who have it. I think that's one of the major motivations in that case, at least from what I can tell, because when you look a little bit at the rest of the world and other solutions and ask yourself the question, okay, what is the actual goal of a central bank digital currency? What can that tool actually do, and what can't it do? And does it actually solve the problem we have? I think that's a question that is not discussed enough in that context, and I just want to share you 90-second clip from an interview from IMF discussion, International Monetary Fund, where the head of finance of Singapore is talking, and I think Singapore is kind of similar situation than a lot of Caribbean nations. Again, small country, small landmass, small population, but relatively wealthy. Therefore, I think it might be reasonable to listen to them.
I'm not entirely convinced that a retail CBDC is required to meet the competition posed by, say, privately issued stable coins. Because what is the advantage? The advantage that privately issued stable coins bring is not that they are digital. All our money today is digital. We make transfers very, very quickly. It is the platform upon which these currencies operate. A stable coin operates on a larger e-commerce or social media platform where the payments function is integrated into a whole range of other things that we do. We want to watch a movie, we want to buy a house, we want to go to a restaurant. Payments is in part of it. We don't desire payments for its own sake. So when you're up against platform economics, I'm not sure retail CBDCs, simply issuing it and putting it on our e-wallet is going to be because you can just as well do that today with your credit cards. So I'm not convinced about retail CBDCs in that regard. Now, wholesale CBDCs, different matter. I think they can do better than private cryptocurrencies or stable coins because of the fiat backing and because they're issued on both sides. So the experiment we did with the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, both central banks on either side issue a wholesale CBDC. A transfer can be made. I can send money to a friend in Canada in Singapore dollars. It gets translated into Canadian dollars. Settlement is, just a couple of hours. I mean, that's in the pilot. We've not scaled it yet, but that's the vision. And the wholesale CBDC there acts as an anchor for that blockchain transaction to work. I would not rule out a privately issued bank CBDC being able to perform the same function, but they don't have any particular advantage because here we are not in the platform situation, we are simply in a cross-border transfer situation. So I think that is going to be a very interesting development to watch over time. And I do think most of the excitement, most of the impactful use cases are going to be in wholesale CBDCs for cross-border payments, cross-border trade finance, and so on.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons, or I think why this is a good example for a situation where we see a problem, we want to solve that problem, we have a new piece of technology that is kind of hyped up at the moment, and then we just try to plug that technology in and without making sure or assessing upfront if that tool, if that technology can actually solve the problem that we have. And then, talk to your peers. Probably everybody knows about a failed digital transformation project where you then have a fancy, potentially useless and most often expensive piece of technology that then nobody uses. And that's probably a situation that occurs quite often. And a lot of decision makers are afraid that that's the result of their digital transformation project at the end of the day. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people or a lot of businesses often delay these kind of projects or delay these kind of decisions. And that's also the reason why I think that you always have a strategy first approach, meaning you should have a plan and a clear understanding of the actual problem that you're trying to solve or the business outcome that you're trying to achieve. And then in the second step, you look for the tools. Same like a doctor. In the first step, you diagnose the actual problem. And then in the second step, you prescribe a therapy or a treatment. And that means you need to ask the important questions first. And I think a lot of times, people don't ask these questions or maybe ask the wrong questions. And as simple as it sounds, and I think that's maybe one of the reasons why people often maybe have an unnecessary fear or overcomplicate things, meaning people often have the urge, really to make things more complicated than they are. And I'm always a proponent of keep it as simple as possible so that everybody in your organization can understand it. And you should be able to explain to everybody in your organization if they ask, okay, why are you doing that at the end of the day? And involve everybody in that decision-making process so that they don't have the feeling, okay, that's just something that is dictated from top down, but there's actually a reason for these changes often, and that's also usually the best way to get people behind a project, behind a digital transformation, or behind change management. Again, another cool term. So question number one, and maybe the most important question, why are we doing this? Why are we embarking on that new project? What is the reason? And then, of course, we're trying to become more specific and tie that as possible, or if possible, to some form of business result. What is the problem that we are trying to solve here? How can we measure that we actually make progress? Again, we don't implement technology just so that we have a new shiny toy or tool that we can show, but to actually get a result. And I want to use the metaphor of building a house in that case. So for example, when you start building a house, then one of the first questions is as simple as it sounds. Okay, what are we building? Are we building a house in the suburbs for a family? Are we building a big corporate construction, a big corporate headquarters, or are we building something that is completely off the grid in the wilderness? Again, depending on the goal, you would have different approach, you would have different resources, different people involved in that process. And then you make a plan or start mapping out the strategy. Then you buy the tools and materials after you know what you actually need. And after you have an estimate how much you need, how much it costs, and so on. And then the last step in the process is that you actually start building, or when we talk about digital, implementing software or whatever it might be in your specific case. And I know that sounds very simple, but again, when we look at a lot of projects. It's the other way around. It's like, hey, we have a new technology, or a friend or uncle or a fellow business partner said he or she heard about that new software or that new app or that new whatever, and now we have to do that too, instead of asking these questions first. And again, I'm not only want to talk about theory, but actually give you a framework that you can use, a very simple step-by-step process that you can follow. And then at the end, you actually have something that you can use and that you then go from there and think about implementing from there. But again, I think the most important part is to actually ask the right questions and then make the necessary decisions. And that means step number one, get your decision makers in one room. And when I say one room, of course, that can be physical or hybrid or remote or whatever makes sense in your situation. And usually we're talking about, around 5 people, sometimes more, but a maximum of 10 people. And it's really important that we're talking about decision makers here, meaning it's very important that after that process or after that session, after that exercise, you don't have to go through a committee or get confirmation or approval for the decisions that you made or for the plan that you developed. Otherwise, that's really pointless. And that's why it's important that everybody that is involved in that exercise actually has decision-making competence. So meaning when we're talking about the roles, and again, depending if you're working in a smaller company, a lot of these roles probably overlapping. If you're working in a bigger organization, you have more a silo approach and different departments. But just to give you an idea, who are the persons that should be present in that session? That's usually the CEO or the founder, especially when you're talking about a big project like that. Then the person or persons that knows best about the operations and the product, meaning you need really someone that has hands on the product every day, knows the whole assembly process or service process, or depending on your company. Then, of course, customer service, meaning someone that really reflects the customer side of things, knows what the customers think, what they want, what they complain about, and so on, meaning someone that is really close to the customer. Then, of course, finance department, meaning someone that can actually tell you, okay, how much does that cost? Where do you lose the most money? Where do you spend the most money? What's the most profitable section? And so on. And of course, sales and marketing. And there might be a few more roles, functions, or departments that you want to integrate here, depending on your situation. That might be reasonable or not, depending on your situation, but that's usually a good starting point. Then step number 2, after you got, after you identified your stakeholders and got all of them in one room, now you actually collect ideas for the business improvement, or to rephrase it, you actually collect the problems or the hurdles that you have, meaning it's really a brainstorming session where everybody just writes on a piece of paper what he or she thinks would be the best for the company, what is one of the biggest problems, where they see the biggest room for improvement, everything around that. So it's really just getting as much ideas as possible, not necessarily about the quality yet, but just, okay, what do people think could be important in that context? And just as a helpful tip here, usually when you do that in practice, usually the best way is to use these kind of sticky notes. It can be physical or again remote in a software program, and you should phrase these things like, how might we, and then how might we achieve X, how might we solve problem Y. Okay, I think that's usually, just from a psychological psychological perspective, usually one of the best approaches or ways to phrase a question like that. And then again, you just collect as many ideas as you can, or as you can get. Usually 15 minutes, maybe 30, but that's usually too long. But 15 minutes is usually a time frame where you can collect these ideas. And just to give you some support here, some areas of focus that you can think of. Again, don't overcomplicate things. You don't need to be a tech expert or have software experience or anything like that. Just think about your day-to-day business process, your day-to-day work, and think, okay, where are time wasters? Where are repetitive processes and so on? For example, are you still using paper processes in a lot of cases and outdated technology like fax machine and so on? And when you work in some form of public or government organization, that's probably the form of technology that you are most familiar with and is still used till today in a lot of companies. So just think, okay, if everybody of your employees spends 20 minutes every day with operating that machine or wasting time with paperwork, if you can crunch that down to 5 minutes per day and save therefore 75% of these kind of mundane tasks, what would that mean on a yearly basis, and how much money would you save? How much would you increase your output, and so on? So really think in very simple user stories or in very simple tasks or problems that you face in your day-to-day life. Again, it's not about finding a solution yet. It's just finding, okay, where can we improve? How might we improve? And usually we can, the areas or the results are usually in one of these 3 areas that I'm going to touch on very briefly now. They either lower costs in some way or form. You can measure it directly, sometimes indirectly, but either you can save costs by replacing some form of legacy system, or you can increase customer satisfaction. However that might look like, that your customers are really more satisfied with your services, that they recommend your company more, that your average order value increases, your overall revenue increases, you make more sales, personal recommendations of your customers increase. However you going to measure it, but usually it's very easy, at least in my perspective, to implement some form of technology to make it easier for your customer to buy from you or to communicate more and to communicate with you, and to increase the overall satisfaction with your company, with your brand, or with your organization, if you are a government organization, for example. Or, of course, it can increase productivity. So no matter if your team is happier and more productive because they can use technology that actually makes their life and work easier, or you can really save costs in operating your systems, or maybe cutting out a middleman completely, or are no longer dependent on an external vendor, but can now do it in-house. Whatever it might be, you can usually, again, put it under one of these 3 areas. Either you can lower your costs, you can increase your customer satisfaction, or you can increase your overall productivity. And then step number 3, after you collected all these ideas, again, and now you should have a list of ideas. Some of them are probably double. Then you just combine them. Don't really start a big discussion about minor details. Again, we want to look at the big picture and want to make decisions today, meaning you have a list and now we need to prioritize, meaning where do we actually start? Which of these things that we can do should we actually do and make sense? And let me pick it up a little. There we go. And one tool that I like to use in that scenario is an impact versus effort matrix. And you can, again, use software if you do that in a remote workshop, or you can do that in your office spaces on a whiteboard or whatever. Just draw two axes, and on the one side you have the impact, and on the other side you have the effort. And then the task of your of the members of these exercises now to just take the post-it notes with their ideas and put them in the quadrant that they think make sense. Meaning we have 4 quadrants. We have the one in the left upper corner where we have a high impact and low effort, meaning everything that lands in that quadrant is, generally speaking, a yes, meaning sounds good, it makes sense to implement that. Then we have on the top right corner the quadrant or the area where we have high impact, but also high effort, meaning that can mean it will take a lot of time to implement these changes, or will cost a lot of money, whatever it might be. And again, you judge for your circumstances. Then on the lower half of the matrix, we have on the left side low impact and low effort. You say, okay, maybe we can think about that. And then we have on the right side, on the lower side of the matrix, high effort, low impact. And of course, these are the things or the projects that we don't do. And I think that's a way how we can very easily and very quickly visualize and prioritize the different tasks, the different ideas that you have that can help you in your digital transformation. And again, just put the post-its there. We can still afterwards talk about if you move them from one quadrant to another to kind of get a collective agreement on the whole map. And then you will probably see that you have 2, 3, a handful of ideas in the high impact, low effort corner of the matrix of the quadrant. And these should be the projects or ideas where you can focus on and really evaluate, okay, does it make sense? And then step number 4, and now we are at the last step of the whole process. Now we can start thinking about executing and implementing after we make sure that after we prioritize, analyzed the different options that we have. And then in the last step, we actually start implementing, and now we choose the right tools and have a look at the different tools that are available on the market. All right, so let me recap really quick what I want to communicate today, or a really easy starting point that you can, or really easy framework that you can use to get started with your digital transformation and don't get stuck. So again, step number 1, make sure you get all your decision makers in one room, real or virtual, and start collecting ideas, brainstorm ideas where you think that could improve your business in whatever shape or form. And then in the second step, you go and prioritize these ideas. You use an impact effort matrix, try to figure out, okay, which one have the lowest effort and the highest impact. And these are the projects or the ideas that you start with. Again, now you start doing your due diligence to analyze them and start choosing the right tools. And then in the last step, you start implementing and executing. I think that's, hopefully demonstrates why it's so important to spend a little bit more time in strategy and thinking about how you actually approach things instead of have the shiny object syndrome and start with every new technology that comes your way. And you go left and right and up and down, but you don't really move forward, although you are constantly moving. Therefore, I hope that was helpful to you. If you want to know more about that, or if you want our personal help with facilitating that kind of workshop, feel free to reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn, visit our website. There should be a link down below. And of course, if you haven't done so as yet, give the video a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if we aren't connected on LinkedIn yet, feel free to do so. And of course, I always appreciate it if you can say a word or two or send me a message where you actually know me from, so that I can make the connection. All right, I hope that was helpful. I wish you a great week, and I hope to see you next time. Have a good one. Bye-bye.